neutral names, affirming of them without a satire, that there had been as many knaves and fools at least as wise as good men, since the world began, who had indifferently borne them, so that, like equal forces acting against each other in contrary directions, he thought they mutually destroyed each other's effects, for which reason he would often declare he would not give a cherry stone to choose amongst them. Bob, which was my brother's name, was another of these neutral kinds of Christian names, which operated very little either way, and as my father happened to be at Epsom when it was given him, he would oft-times thank heaven it was no worse. Andrew was something like a negative quantity in algebra with him. It is worse, he said, than nothing. William stood pretty high. Nums again was low with him, and Nick, he said, was the devil. But of all the names in the universe, he had the most unconquerable aversion for Tristram. He had the lowest and most contemptible opinion of it of anything in the world, thinking it could possibly produce nothing in rerum natura but what was extremely mean and pitiful. So that in the midst of a dispute on the subject, in which, by the by, he was frequently involved, he would sometimes break off in a sudden and spirited epiphanema, or rather arotesis, raised a third and sometimes a full fifth above the key of the discourse, and demanded categorically of his antagonist whether he would take upon him to say he had ever remembered, whether he had ever read, or even whether he had ever heard tell of a man called Tristram performing anything great or worth recording. No, he would say, Tristram, this thing is impossible. What could be wanting in my father but to have wrote a book to publish this notion of his to the world? Little boots it to the subtle speculist to stand single in his opinions, unless he give them proper vent. It was the identical thing which my father did, for in the year 16, which was 2 years before I was born, he was at the pains of writing an express dissertation simply upon the word Tristram, shewing the world, with great candour and modesty, the grounds of his great abhorrence to the name. When this story is compared with the title page, will not the gentle reader pity my father from his soul, to see an orderly and well-disposed gentleman, who, though singular, yet inoffensive in his notions, so played upon in them by cross purposes, to look down upon the stage and see him baffled and overthrown in all his little systems and wishes, to behold a train of events perpetually falling out against him, and in so critical and cruel a way, as if they had purposely been planned and pointed against him, merely to insult his speculations. In a word, to behold such a one in his old age, ill-fitted for troubles, 10 times in a day suffering sorrow, 10 times in a day calling the child of his prayers, Tristram, melancholy dissyllable of sound, which to his ears was unison to nincompoop, and every name vituperative under heaven. By his ashes, I swear it, if ever malignant spirit took pleasure or busied itself in traversing the purposes of mortal man, it must have been here, and if it was not necessary I should be born before I was christened, I would this moment give the reader an account of it. Chapter 19.